Okay, just in time. I want to apologize for the wait. And we will get underway. Call the regular meeting of Township Council for the purposes of public hearing to order. Of course, I would like to begin by acknowledging that we are meeting here today on the traditional territories of the Coast Salish peoples, and in particular, acknowledge our unique and special relationship with the Kwantlen, Katzie, Matsqui, and Semiahmoo First Nations. So with that, Madam Clerk, if you could read the preamble.
A public hearing is a statutory requirement under Section 464 of the Local Government Act and must be held before third reading of a community plan, land use contract amendment bylaw, heritage designation bylaw, or heritage revitalization agreement bylaw. During a public hearing, Council acts in a quasi-judicial role for the purpose of allowing persons who believe their interest in property is affected by a bylaw, permit, or other matter to make representations to Council either orally, by written submission, or to add comments to or elaborate upon correspondence that may have already been presented to Council concerning the bylaws. It is important to note that Council is not able to receive any additional information on the bylaws following the public hearing as dictated by case law. The hearing procedure involves an explanation from the Community Development Division on the purpose of the proposed bylaws and to hear from individuals regarding the bylaws. In order to ensure that all interested parties have a reasonable opportunity to be heard, speakers are requested to keep representations as brief and succinct as possible and no longer than 5 minutes in duration, excluding the time required for questions from Council. Speakers will be asked to state their name, neighborhood, and city for the record. And if referring to prepared remarks, to submit copies of these to the Township Clerk. Decorum must be always maintained. This includes refraining from applause, booing, or heckling. To assist with large numbers of speakers, individuals must advise the Township Clerk and sign the speakers list prior to the commencement of the public hearing. The names on the speakers list will be read out during the hearing. Individuals who have already addressed Council and wish to add further submissions will wait until the people that have not yet addressed Council have had an opportunity to speak. All submissions and speaker lists are considered part of the public record. Council members should not express their views nor debate the bylaws. However, they may question speakers to clarify particular points in their submissions. Council may consider third reading or third reading and final adoption at this meeting or at its next regular meeting. Thank you.
With that, can I get a motion to adopt the agenda, please? Moved by Councillor Pratt, seconded by Councillor Martins. Any other discussion on the agenda? No. Call the question on A1. Can we mark Councillor Richter absent, please? And that carries unanimously with Councillor Richter absent. Move to item B1. Mr. Richardson.
Thank you, Worship. Item B1 is available for Council's consideration. It's a highway closure, dedication, removal, and disposal bylaw.
Yeah, I'll move it. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Rinn. Is there any discussion on B1? Seeing none, call the question on B1. That carries unanimously. Item C1, Mr. Richardson.
Thank you, Worship. The subject Gloucester Industrial Park Community Plan and Rezoning application pertains to a proposed liquor retail use at 26426 56th Avenue. The site is designated service commercial in the Gloucester Industrial Park Community Plan. This star photo depicts the site located at the southeast corner of 264th Street and 56th Avenue. Proposed Gloucester Industrial Park Community Plan Amendment Bylaw 5936 amends the service commercial land use designation to accommodate a licensee retail store on the subject site. Proposed rezoning bylaw 5937 amends the existing C3 zoning to permit a licensee retail store on a site-specific basis. Staff recommends support of Gloucester Industrial Park Community Plan Bylaw 5936 and rezoning Bylaw 5937, subject to one condition listed on page 5 of Council's agenda. Your Worship, a total of 74 notices were mailed out, 1 written submission has been received, and there are no individuals on the speakers list.
Are there any submissions from the public on item C1? For a second time, is there any submissions from the public on item C1? For a third and final time, is there any submissions from the public on item C1? That, I'll close the public speakers for C1. Is the proponent here to wish to speak, submit anything? Not seeing that. Oh, come forward if you feel you need to. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm Edna Lazat. I'm with Rising Tide Consultants. We're the agent acting for TAA Holdings. We just want to be here to answer any questions that may arise. This really is the perfect location for a liquor store. There's nothing within, 4.3 kilometers to the 264th and Fraser Highway, and 9.3 kilometers to Fort Langley, or 9.8 kilometers to Abbotsford. But
You didn't even look at your notes for that. That's pretty good.
it's all up here.
Oh, there. Unless-
The only other requirement was the Ministry of Transportation sign-off. They have given preliminary approval to March 14th for 1 year until they receive your council bylaw sign-off. So that's the only requirement. So we ask that you approve this rezoning application and the text amendment, as this is the perfect location.
Great. I'm not seeing any questions from council.
Okay,
Great.
thank you.
Thank you. With that, I'll close the public hearing on item C1. Does anybody wish to move third reading this application? Moved by Councillor Pratt, seconded by Councillor Martin. So we'll call the question on considering third reading. That carries unanimously. Does anybody wish to move third reading? Moved by Councillor Van Popta. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Pratt. Is there any discussion on C1? Seeing none, I'll call the question on C1. That carries unanimously. Item C2, Mr. Richardson.
Thank you, Worship. The subject Central Gordon Estate Neighborhood Plan Amendment and rezoning applications pertain to future multifamily development at 20320 72B Avenue. The .191 acre site is designated multifamily in the Willoughby Community Plan and institutional in the Central Gordon Estate Neighborhood Plan. This air photo depicts the site located on the southeast corner of 202 Street and 72B Avenue. Proposed Central Gordon Estate Neighborhood Plan Amendment Bylaw 5681 designates the site medium-density apartment and includes a site in a development permit area. Proposed rezoning Bylaw 5862 amends the existing suburban residential 2 zoning to comprehensive development 193 to accommodate the proposed apartment use. Staff recommends support of Central Gordon Estate Neighborhood Plan Amendment Bylaw 5861 and rezoning Bylaw 5862, subject to 2 conditions listed on page 9 of Council's agenda. Your Worship, a total of 360 notices were mailed out, 4 written submissions have been received, and there is 1 individual note on the speakers list. And that is Richard Oleski, Your Worship.
Yeah, so is Mr. Alexi here? Please come forward. Did I get that correct? Great.
You did, yes. And thanks for that. Ukrainian name.
Yep.
Most people get it wrong. This is new to me, so.
Please go ahead, and it's no problem at all. Just
Yeah.
make your submission, and please give us your name and address for the record, if you don't
Yeah,
mind.
my name-
Neighborhood for the record, sorry.
What's that, sorry?
Just your neighborhood. You don't have to give us your
Yeah.
address.
Yeah, I'm right there on 72B at 202A. My name's Richard Alexi. Moved there in a new townhouse a year and a half ago. It became pretty apparent pretty quickly just how busy 72B was going to be. There was already one townhouse complex of over 80 units, and ours just completed with 30 units. There was also a apartment complex with 60-ish units. All told now, with the new complexes that are just about completed across the street from us on just to the right, I guess, or just to the east of the plot we're discussing today. That's like another 150 units. We are now going to be up to 383 homes that only has 1 gateway in and out. Last Christmas, when we had that freezing rain, there was cars that were stuck on the road. If people had emergencies, there was only one way out of there. So we're almost up to 400 homes in that area. There's another unit, or there's another complex that's being built just east of the ones that are currently under construction. On there, you'll see it's that green space just to the right of 20356. I talked to that developer. He says his units are gonna have at least another 100. Still, he's told that all traffic is gonna go down 72B. 72B ends up going, if you look on there, there's no, there are no lights there. It's just essentially you're waiting for traffic. My concerns are, a lot of it is around safety. We have a lot of kids that are walking up north to the two schools. That would be R.E. Mountain and Peter Ewitt. There's a lot of chicken that's taking place across that road at 202A. Part of it is because when people get through 72, they know there's some rural road up ahead, and they're already at full speed by the time they're going past our complexes. And likewise, coming south, they're leaving rural and they're coming into relatively high density, going much faster than they should be. And there's a lot of students that are trying to cross through there if they haven't crossed at 72. So my main concern is we're talking about another however many units going into this plot that's here, and we're talking about rezoning for that. And there's been a lot that has been asked of 72B. It's like I said, it's super busy. If I were to have a home and wanted to put a basement suite in it, I would told that I would have to have 2 exit points out of the basement suite. But we're approaching 500 homes that are just being asked to exit out of this one little small street currently. Some of the people that are in the complex next to mine, the townhomes, they've been trying to mitigate that much traffic coming out of 72B by parking along 73A, and then just out of the blue, last month, a whole bunch of no parking signs went up on that street. So, and right now, heading east on 72B, it's been blocked off. We don't know when the roads are coming through there. So for me, I'm speaking on behalf of my complex, which is 30 units, but we're just really kind of concerned on just adding more and more development in there without any sort of understanding of what the impact is on the traffic flow and safety. So the other piece I'd like to just mention briefly is on this notice that we got, it says to facilitate an apartment complex or apartment development. When digging deeper on the website, it does say that it's going to be non-market housing, which is fine. We're not here to be NIMBYs, but there might have been more people might have paid more attention to this if that was on here. And I don't know, I don't understand why maybe it wouldn't have been mentioned on here that the idea of the rezoning was for non-market housing.
Yes, I sympathize with that, and
Yeah.
We'll clarify that for you here this evening.
Okay, so
It's-
you'll
it's-
clarify that?
it's- I'll clarify. It's hopefully not what might be assumed. We'll clarify
Yeah.
that.
And this, we're not concerned about the or at least I'm not concerned about the non-market housing, although we would like some transparency around what that really means, and what the end objective is for that. That would be an ideal green space, obviously. Everybody wants green space. If you look at Google Maps, our neighborhood versus the neighborhoods to the west, there's nothing that we can see that is being set aside for any green space whatsoever. So I would just maybe, like to throw that in there. And then the last bit, I had sent the township an email on July 26th about my concerns on the amount of traffic on 72B. It's trying to get out of 72B, turning left to go south on 202A, and then also trying to enter back onto 73 or 72B without any traffic. Anyway, so I wrote in on July 26th. On August 3rd, I heard that it was going to be assigned to a transportation technologist. 6 weeks later, I followed up because I hadn't heard from anybody. And I was told 3 days after that, yes, somebody should be reaching out to you. Again, I haven't heard from anybody. So that's what brings me here mostly today is it would be great if two things. One, if this could be reissued where my neighbors are all aware that it's non-market housing before it just gets pushed through. And two, it would be really great if you could send people out there from the city planning department just to see what's being asked of that small little road right now currently.
Thank
That's
you.
it.
Yeah, thank you for your submission.
Yeah.
There's no questions from council. Okay, thank you. I see no other speakers on the speakers list. Is there any other members of the public wish to speak to item C2? For a second time, are there any members of the public who wish to speak to item C2? For a third and final time, are there any members of the public that wish to speak to item C2? With that, we'll close the public hearing for item C2. I think it might be appropriate. I'll move reconsideration of third reading for C2. Is there a second? Or seconded by Councillor Bailey? We'll call the question on C2. Consideration of third reading for C2. That carries unanimously. I'll move third reading. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Rent. So that's on the floor now. So council can consider a deferral if it wishes to take some more time with this and get some information about the long-term traffic plan. But we'd like to get this on the floor because we can't speak to it during the public hearing officially. The non-market market housing item, I think we should maybe look at a deferral and consider re-notification. But the challenge there is this is owned by the Township of Langley. It is slated for non-market housing, but not intended for low income. It is intended for missing middle housing, and we can't say too much more than that due to pending provincial announcements that may or may not happen. So it's always cautious to say too much until it's official, but it's not intended for supportive or any other BC housing that we typically see in the community or other communities. That's not the purpose. I think it's important to note that. We could maybe clarify that and then repeat the process. So I think if any members of council wish to speak to it, we could certainly look at the timeline for 204th Street and some other improvements in the area. And in regards to green space, there is items in the pipeline to address just that concern for this area, not slated for this property, but being considered for others. So if any other members of council wish to speak to the third reading before we just consider a deferral? Councillor Martins.
Just so that I'm clear, the deferral is to give more time to find out about the traffic plan?
I could give council some time to consider the submissions, and there were some written submissions, and maybe I can look into the timeline for 204th and some other access and get some comfort from the traffic engineering and respond to these concerns before we look at an approval.
I'd like that, thank you.
Okay, so I'll move deferral to November 6th. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Martins. Is there any discussion on that deferral? Seeing none, I'll call the question on the deferral. That carries unanimously. Mr. Richardson, item C3.
Thank you, Worship. The subject, rezoning and development permit applications pertain to a proposed 5-story, 43-unit apartment building at 27257 and 27265 28A Avenue. The 0.7-acre site is designated medium-density residential in the Alder Grove Community Plan. This air photo depicts the site located on the north side of 28A Avenue, east of 272 Street. Proposed rezoning bylaw 5903 amends the existing residential zone R1B zoning to comprehensive development zone 188 to accommodate the proposed apartment use. The next series of slides are site plan renderings and elevations, as well as a landscape plan as indicated in development permit 101194. Staff recommends support of rezoning bylaw 5903, subject to 10 conditions, and development permit 101194, subject to 5 conditions listed on page 5 of council's agenda. Your Worship, a total of 74 notices were mailed out, 13 written submissions have been received, and there are 2 individuals noted on the speakers list. And they are Deanna Hunter and Anthony Hunter, Your Worship.
Great. Deanna Hunter, come forward. Great.
Good
Thanks for coming. Go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Eric Woodward and councillors. My name's Deanna Hunter, and I've lived in Alder Grove for over 40 years on 28A Avenue. My husband and I own the 2 remaining properties at the end of 28A Avenue, neighboring the east of the proposed development. In this time, I've witnessed the tranquility that our road offers our community by providing a safe space for residents of all ages to walk and enjoy. Many children use this road every day as a quiet, safe path to walk to and from the local schools. It is also enjoyed daily by the many seniors that live nearby, and it would be a great loss to see this compromised. I'm here today to express the concerns that myself and many others in our community have with the repercussions of opening up this road as a thoroughfare as a result of this development. It's stated on the report to Mayor and Council that provisions to this road must satisfy and be in accordance with the Master Transportation Plan, the Subdivision Development Bylaws, and the Alder Grove Community Plan. However, I could see no future provisions to 28A represented on these documents. Provisions are also not shown in the future road infrastructure maps that were sent to me by the Manager of Transportation and Engineering here. In the ACP, it shows future conceptual drawings on the road left as is. It's a no-through road with green space walkway kept intact. Therefore, since the road is already in accordance with all these documents, I feel hopefully it could remain intact as it's shown. There's no need or desire from any of the properties lying to the east of this development for any widening or improvement of 28A along our properties. It's unanimous and includes all the property owners of the existing townhouse development that lies to the east of us. I've also spoken with the developer for the Archdiocese of Vancouver in regards to the Catholic Church property that's directly to the south of 28A. And they stated that they will never develop the eastern half of their property because that's where the new church and parking lot is. And that's also adjacent to the end of our road and my two properties. Therefore, I feel that there's no need for vehicle access there. Furthermore, 273rd, it's a curvy road where people park on both sides, and it makes it very narrowed right now for current traffic. It's also a main access road to the elementary school. If we have increased volume of traffic there in an intersection of streets, it would be a significant safety concern. In conjunction with the approval of the proposed development, the road would potentially need to be widened at the top of where it enters off 272nd up until the proposed apartment buildings, because we just have a single lane right now, basically, as our street. But our road cannot accommodate this right now. For the widening, it would likely require part of the Catholic Church, which is outlined on page 14 of the report to council on the development concept plan. So I don't understand why this development would be allowed to be put in place when our road cannot accommodate it. And I feel it would be more prudent to wait until the Catholic Church developed their upper western part of the property that aligns with 272nd and 28A Avenue. The Alder Grove Community Plan frequently encourages green spaces and pedestrian-friendly walking paths. We currently have this on our road. It's a beautiful curved path with gates for emergency access, and it has a green space. So I would hope that it could be preserved. There are many properties in the township that have bollards or gates installed to preserve the no-through roads. In 2005, when the Township of Langley Council, they allowed the townhouse developer to the east of me to install the gates and the hammerhead turnaround instead of punching our road through. I hope that you'll consider that there's alternative solutions and agree that it's unnecessary to change 28A into a through road so that our families and children and seniors can continue to enjoy the road without safety concern for heavy traffic and speeding vehicles. While I understand progress is definitely necessary, I hope you'll consider the impact that such changes may have on local residents and can work towards a solution to satisfy the community out there. I've emailed in the speech, so you have reference, and attached my documents, as well as there was a local petition that got 160 signatures in hopes of preserving 28A Avenue. So thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you.
Okay.
Anthony Hunter, come forward, please.
Good evening, Mayor Woodward and councillors. My name is Anthony Hunter. Thank you for allowing me these few moments to address my concerns surrounding the proposed development on Site 28A. I have lived at 27291 28A for 20 years, and my wife Deanna's family has lived there for more than 50 years. As I stood outside our back deck and tried to imagine what a 65-foot building would look like, I strongly believe there needs to be a compromise to the height of this development. The solar document for the site is taken on June 21st, summer solstice, the day of the least shadow in the sky. On that day, the proposed development will create 6 hours of sun loss to our property, which is a 30% decrease in natural light. Additionally, their plan is to combine the two neighboring eastern lots as one property to reflect the shadowing on this document, which gives the illusion of a lesser impact. Our home is downhill from the development at a grade of 10 feet lower than the proposed 65-foot building, which would further impact the solar effect to our neighboring home throughout the entire year, with a minimum loss of 4 hours of sun to as much as 6 hours of direct sun loss. This will put our homes in shadow for most of the calendar year. Attached to my submissions is a more accurate solar cast analysis showing this impact. On page 79 of the community plan number 3.10, section A says, site new development to maximize privacy of adjacent outdoor private spaces. We already have 3-story townhomes neighboring our property to the east that were built on top of grade that is 3 feet higher than our backyard, which consequently restricts the morning sunlight. With the new development, we would be sandwiched between the two developments with little light in the morning or evening all year round, losing even more privacy. Section F of the Alder Grove Community Plan also states new developments should ensure that sitting, form, scale of buildings do not block significant views and solar access from existing or anticipated developments, and the shadowing impacts on adjacent residential buildings and usable open spaces are minimized. This proposed development in no way satisfies this requirement. I'd like to note that in 2010, when our neighbor Gordy Clark had suggested to council that our street be included in the Alder Grove Community Plan for high density or medium density, that it was in no way representation of what anyone else on our street wanted. We submitted a signed letter from all the neighbors to have our street not included in this plan. I do not believe the wants of one should have overwritten the wishes of the majority, and I have attached this letter with my submission. I emailed supporting documents for the solar casting drawings done by an engineer on our community letter to TOL in 2010 to remove us from the community plan when it was at the proposal stage. In the first image I provided at 12 p.m., it shows the neighboring property unaffected by the orange shadow cast. By 3:20, the neighboring property is beginning to be shaded. The 5 p.m. shadow is shown to corroborate with the design drawings and to show the property is already shaded. By 5:45, the property is almost entirely shaded. By 6:15, second property over is beginning to be shaded, and by 7:15, the second property is entirely shaded, and sunset's not till 9:19. Also included are the hours of sunlight. Shadowing is illustrated by the green cast diagrams. The existing conditions, which we currently live, gives us 15.2 hours of sunlight in the front and the backyards. After the development is completed, it would reduce to 9.6 hours, netting a loss of 4.6 hours of sunlight, a 30% loss. Dan and I have built our forever home here, and we also own the property right next door to the proposed apartments, which our children will move into one day. I believe that until the solar effect of our homes by this development is further addressed, that the rezoning should not be allowed. The rezoning of this property for development does not satisfy the standards of the TOL. Due to these considerations, development should not be allowed to go any further until there is sufficient design to satisfy this minimum standard. The green space currently allocated within the development plans shown to occur on the western part of the development, and in the community plan, it also shows the green space path. However, in its current location, the path will end at the outer wall of the new senior assistant living complex. Would it not make more sense to move the green space allocation to the eastern part of the proposed property so that it aligns with the current park that is just north of the property and would allow fluid walking? Oh, I think I lost myself here. Sorry. Well, I'll just carry on. A fluid walking path. Additionally, I'd greatly appreciate you take the time to review the emailed submission from Howard Hunter, as he had decades of experience working as the provincial approving officer for submissions and land developments. He has provided very insightful recommendations for the proposed development. Also, I'd like to note that it seems there is no current developer sitting on the money waiting to develop this property. The drawings were done in 2019, and this property was currently listed for sale this year and sat on the market for 3 months. Thank you kindly for your time and consideration surrounding the proposed development and rezoning.
All right, thank you for your submission. Do you have a written copy you can provide to the clerk, or has that been submitted to us already?
It has been
It has
submitted.
been
Yeah.
submitted, okay.
Yeah.
Great. Is there any
Thank you.
others? Yeah, thank you. Any other submissions from the public on item C3? Any other submissions from the public on item C3? For a third time, are there any other submissions from the public on item C3? That will close the public portion. Is there a proponent that wishes to come forward and make any submissions? Seeing none, close the public hearing for item C3. So I'll just ask, is there any member of council wishes to consider third reading on this? Not seeing that, so that will be considered again at our next regular meeting on November 6th. Moving on, Mr. Richardson, item C4.
Thank you, Worship. Item C4 pertains to the Williams Neighborhood Plan update. Bylaw 5799 amends the Willoughby Community Plan by incorporating the Williams Neighborhood Plan and related and consequential amendments to the land use of the Willoughby Community Plan. In particular, Bylaw 5799 amends the Langley Official Community Plan by providing a revised neighborhood plan for the Williams area, amends the Willoughby Community Plan by incorporating the revised Williams Neighborhood Plan and related amendments to the Willoughby Community Plan, proposes to provide for more residential density, mixed-use development in urban park areas, and provides population projections, a land use designation map, and development permit provisions. Required notifications for the proposed bylaw 5799 included a newspaper ad in the Langley Times on the October the 12th and 19th. Both advertisements combined meet the requirements of the Local Government Act, as well as 921 public hearing notices of the proposed bylaws in the form of address-specific postcards sent to registered owners or occupants on October the 11th in the neighborhood plan area plus surrounding properties within 5 properties on a roadway and 100 meters of the plan pursuant to the Local Government Act. Your Worship, 35 written submissions have been received, and there were 7 individuals noted on the speakers list. The first 2 are Noni Sasudo and Rachel Bailey, Your Worship.
Great. Noni Sasudo, please come forward. Go ahead.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Noni Chikudo. I reside in Williams at 7879 216 Street with my husband Nat, our 2 children, and our tenants who are students of Trinity Western University. We have attended all of the engagement opportunities offered to us for the planning of Williams. Professional neighborhood planning experts were brought in from Modus Consulting with a starting contract of over $83,000 to assist in the creation of Williams' neighborhood plan. Everything was considered, from crime and security to ease of mobility in and around the neighborhood. The planning consultants knew the projected growth for Willoughby and included the types of housing most appropriate for the Williams area. Higher density housing to the west and gradually scaling down to less density along the agricultural border to the east. The existing Williams plan achieves this balanced approach. The proposed plan does not. It throws out years of work, dollars, and voices that contributed to the Williams plan and replaces it with an unsustainable, non-vetted vision of a few. We stayed and improved our home because at the time we knew we had due public process, to which we fully participated. Now, after having 1 month since the open house to consider this almost entire revision, it seems we have wasted our time. In regards to the residential transition zones, we agree with the integration of residential into the transition zone along 212th Street, buffering the residential and commercial areas. And we agree with keeping the lower impact transition zone along 76th Avenue and ALR. But the removal of the lower impact transition zone along 216th Street is highly questionable. The Modus planning consultants had consistently recommended a scaling back of densities along the urban ALR interface. That combined with the Arbor Ribbon, which is supposed to run along the Milner Escarpment, 76th Avenue, and up 216th Street, would help to mitigate the increasing urban impact on 216th Street. The proposed Williams neighborhood update represents a 139% increase to the population. 216th Street between 80th Avenue and Glover is already heavily stressed with the current Willoughby population and its connection to Highway 1. Even with the future plans of widening to 4 lanes and the 212 connector, this road poses much more traffic hazards and risk to mobility than any of 208 Street. The railroad at Glover, the sharp bend where at least 5 accidents have occurred since the 216th Street highway opening. The 2 intersections will be included on the steep topography of 216th, where even salting won't help you when it's icy. Since the highway connection, Canada Post refused to continue service to residents' mailboxes along 216th Street due to safety concerns for their staff. Since the highway connection, the 80th Avenue intersection on 216th Street has already seen multiple fatality accidents. And of course, there are the active farming vehicles that regularly depend on this road. All of this and the proposed plan is to impose more traffic here from medium to high density apartments. Previously, I've asked planners, after all this work, what kind of guarantee do we have that the sustainable policies will be realized? Their answer was, when developer rezoning applications come forward, it will ultimately be up to council to uphold the sustainable vision in the plan. With this update, the TOL has effectively done the work for the developers. This proposed housing landscape has been designed for bankers, developers, and TOL coffers, not residents. To show good faith in making this neighborhood livable, please consider the efforts of the original plan. As it is, we oppose this proposed update to the Williams neighborhood plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, Rachel Bailey.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Rachel Bailey. I live in the Williams Neighborhood Park. I call it Willoughby Slope. I live at the 83rd A and 212th. I spoke at the last meeting regarding the proposed changes to our area, but now it's expanded all the way up to, I think it's 76. So after reviewing it at home, the proposed changes, I've only been in the area for 7 years, so I wasn't here in the past of how it's been proposed and the developments have changed. My concerns are regarding the density. I read online that in 2018, there was an estimated approximate population of 4,600 people. Now this outdated plan is about 5,800 dwellings and 11,000 people is estimated to be influxed into that. That was an article that came up on Facebook for Township. If this goes through, that's what the population is going to be. My concern in the previous council meeting was regarding schools, because I work in schools at Lynn Phipps Elementary and we are slammed. This time my concerns is more for nature space. I went to the LEC a month ago, was looking at the plans there, just because being here for 7 years, there's been a lot of changes in a very short period of time. Trees are being cut down. There seems to be no plans for parks. I asked that question specifically when at that proposal, just with those billboards, and the issue was skirted a bit. The gentleman there was talking about the parks, like the school parks and stuff like that, but that's not what I'm looking for. My question is if there's plans for nature space, he said. I have to specifically ask about nature space. It seems like every time there's a development that goes in, clear cutting occurs. Trees are planted, but it feels like there's very few trees. And there's a lot of families that are moving into this area and there's no space. to enjoy nature. And looking at this as well, yes, you have that green space by that middle school, elementary school coming in. That's, again, feels like it's going to be basically school field park for them to play at. There is the 2 small greener sections. There is that conservation area, which feels very small for your nature to move in and out of. But where is the nature space? Where is the type of park that you have at New West Park, Bear Creek Park, Stanley Park? You have Abbotsford has nice green spaces, but it feels like each time a development goes in, there is no nature space. And I would like to know if that's in the plan, when it's in the plan, and why it's not in any plans that I can see of or find online. LEC expansion is $145 million approximately, but is there money to put into nature space and to conserve what we have in this area? It feels like this is just going to be more densely populated than that area can handle. Traffic flow is going to be a concern. Kids are going to be walking to school. And where is the traffic flow going to go in and out to make sure that they can go to school safely and that they can enjoy that space? Looking at it, it just doesn't feel like that at all. Urban parks feel very small. They're only 1.5 acres. The Williams View Park is only 5.5 acres. It sounds big, but really in reality, it's not that big. My other questions are, is there plans for a community center? Right now, it's impossible to get kids into swimming lessons. There is the Walnut Grove Community Center. There is a W.C. Blair Center, which is further away, about 15 or so minutes. There just isn't enough opportunities for children to enjoy and do those type of events or sports activities besides the LEC for that area. So if you're deciding to develop this, which I don't agree with, bringing that high influx of about 5,800 dwellings and 11,000 people into such a small space is going to cause issues. Schools, as you know, or hopefully do know, are maxed out. We have people coming into the communities. Yes, there is a space there for schools, elementary and middle school, which will help alleviate, but they're crowded. Peter Ewart, they have portables on their property that are not Peter Ewart. They are Ari Mountain portables. Ari Mountain is now the largest school in all of BC at 2,500 students. So portables are on Peter Ewart property because there is no space on Ari Mountain property. They're walking to LEC to have gym class because there's no space for gym class as well. Parking's an issue. Where's the parking gonna be? People will rent out their homes. Street parking is an issue as well. In the area that I currently live in, there's not enough space. And also the retention and replanting of trees. What are the plans for that? There must be a plan, because when you cut out the trees, as you've seen throughout the summer months getting hotter and hotter, trees and that green space are necessary to help alleviate that. What are the plans? Are there plans? Are there going to be plans and money set aside? Because if you have $145 million to expand LEC, I'm sure you have money to plan for nature space as well, so people and citizens in the community can enjoy that as other municipalities in the Lower Mainland enjoy their nature space as well. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker is Trevor Dickerson. Please come forward. So Manny, they had you slated after Trevor?
Yes, except Trevor is my architect. We just switched spots. In fact, I'm not sure that we even need Trevor
Okay.
to come up today. Then we
Well, Trevor can let us know that maybe, but
yeah, Trevor's
Okay.
there, and he,
Okay, good.
he can let
Yeah.
you know.
All
So,
right. All right, but go ahead.
First of all, good evening,
Yeah, go
Mayor and
ahead.
Council. Thanks for the opportunity to speak to you. My name is Manny Chahil. I'm with ZCR Projects, and I'm specifically here from the Williams
Yeah,
Plan.
go ahead.
Okay. So we have 3 properties. If you look to the sort of lower left, you'll see, yeah, there you go. three properties there. One of them is a park, which we're supportive of. We think it's a good idea to have a park there. The main thing that I kind of came up to talk about is the single-family designation that we have there. So I've spoken with engineers, civil engineers, a couple of them. I've also spoken with, and I have my architect, Trevor, here as well. We're finding it very challenging with the slope of that property. Basically what we have here is a challenge that has to do with cost. And with all the issues surrounding the region with affordability, what we're seeing is with this single family and the fact that the property's so sloped, there's gonna be a lot of retaining walls, probably lack of basements, and all these costs that we're gonna incur to develop single family on a hillside like that, with that level of slope, that all kind of gets passed down to the end user. So, to make a long story short, we're hoping that you will send this back to staff so we have the opportunity for staff to work with our consultants to try to see if there's just a better use that can minimize those costs, and we can pass that savings down to the end user. So I think that is about as simple as I can make it.
Just want to clarify some of
Yeah.
your submissions. So one of your sites has been designated park space, is that correct? Which
Correct.
one would that be?
So it's the one on the east.
East there, okay. All right, and you're not requesting that be changed at this point?
No.
Okay, I just
In
want
all,
to clarify that. That's a bit unusual, but I just want to clarify that.
I know it's unusual, but I mean, you do need a park there.
Had some
We
methods,
understand that.
Yeah, okay, and you did this is following up from your written submission that you have submitted to council previously, I believe.
I have sent something to council previously, yes.
Yes, okay.
If you have any questions on the technical side, that's what Trevor's here for. I don't know if it's necessary, but he's happy to answer any questions,
Are there any questions from
if
council?
anybody has any.
I'm not seeing any. So
Okay.
thank you for that.
Thank you for the time
Thanks for
today.
that opportunity. Okay,
Okay.
thank you. Next speaker, John Kush. Did I get that correct? Please come forward.
Mayor and councilors. Anyways, I'm writing about the Williams neighborhood plan. I have writing about our property located on 2117 80th Avenue. We moved here 10 years ago. We did have some parking very briefly for a few years at Christmas time on the south side of 80th Avenue and some parking on the south side of 212th. We later advised that 212th was not wide enough for parking, but they ignored cars parking there. There is no parking allowed for this development. It was a fight with the council that some of our community neighbors worked hard to get a small parking lot put on the corner of 80th Avenue and 212th. But we're advised it's temporary parking only. It has been a great help for family and guests, especially during holidays like Thanksgiving and Christmas. Our children and grandchildren come to visit us. It's great they can park in the parking lot. Drive by this area in the evening and there's no parking anywhere. It's a joke. It looks like they have taken away parking at 212th Street north of 80th Avenue on the east side, so it will be gone. We were told it was a mistake to build in this area and not allow any parking for these properties located on 80th Avenue. We need parking somewhere. Also, Williams neighborhood plan looked like 80th Avenue went right to 216th, but now this new plan, it looks like there's a curve which goes down to 216th. So the only thing that I could consider is whether, I mean, there's not much choices left, but, and I know it's an area where there are so busy intersections, and yeah, I just think the developers are getting a lot more than they should be. But what I would consider is allowing no parking Monday to Friday, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. on the south side of 80th Avenue, from 209 to 212th or 211th to 212th. Also allow all-day parking Saturday and Sunday. It would slow down the traffic when it's not busy. If you don't address the parking issue, it's going to push people like ourselves to park in front of other people's houses from 79A and beyond, and there'll be lots of complaints. Drive around this neighborhood in the evening and check out like 79A. You can see any parking spots. We pay fair taxes. We have 2-car garage, which my wife and I use, and 1 parking spot for the tenant. We like the neighborhood. There wouldn't be an issue with parking if the development was properly planned out for parking. This just got pushed through with no thought about parking. That's it.
Right, thank you for that. No questions from council? Thank you for your submission, appreciate it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Next speaker is Amon Sivia. You're good? Okay. Next speaker is David Davis.
Thank you very much. I've made a real error. The last time I was here, I brought it was nicknamed something, and it's broken. And I had these pictures. I thought I'd just have my son put them on because the pictures explains an awful lot. But you'll see, what I've done is I've got I'll give this to the clerk so you can see them later. The number 1 picture there, if you're going to pass them on, are the lineups. The lineups go, my name is David Davis, and I live at 21782 76B Avenue. And it's a variety of pictures that show what kind of equipment we run on the roads. There's a couple manure spreaders in traffic. The school traffic up 76B on a daily basis is backed right up to our farm sign to show the load of cars right down to 216th to the corner by our heifer barn. We load manure. There's a manure spreader there. And then there's another picture that shows the traffic that we have to contend with. And then there's number 12 and 13 shows that there's no buffer, absolutely, on 216th, and we're blowing silage into a machine, and there's a picture of dust and whatnot. But anyhow, I apologize for that, and I think you'll see the pictures in the next 2 or 3 days, all titled. I dairy farm along the border of 216th and the Williams Neighborhood Plan. We produce about 6,000 liters of milk a day and have over 500 dairy animals on our farm. I'd like to talk about density, doubling density, and population and buffers. By increasing the population and having 5 or 6 story buildings not too far from 216th is going to pose urban-rural conflict. Dairy farms come with dust, smells, and noise. There is no normal set hours for field work, and dust, smells, and noise is normal farm practice supported by the provincial government right to farm. We start early in the morning and work late into the evening. Never mind the fact that on a daily basis, we have the milk truck, feed trucks, sawdust trucks, and all other support vehicles needed to run a dairy. We move our heifers from our heifer barn, which is located 7370 to 16th Street, just right on the corner, and we move them back to the dairy, and we were already experiencing a lot of difficulties with traffic. Higher density along the 216th corridor with no proper agriculture buffer is going to cause nothing but problems for people living there and my ability to farm. An example of a good agriculture buffer was along 208 by Costco, right over here. With the continued growth and poorly planned infrastructure, and I guess maybe I had a part to do with that, in place, this buffer is now being removed to allow 4 lanes and better flow of traffic, which I can see is a direct need to move traffic. More density comes at a cost. Another concern I have with increasing density and population is that we all know that when a development comes, like in the Williams neighborhood plan, they'll most likely want to upzone it. The question is, will this exceed the projected density by upzoning? And that is a problem. I think you all know that. I would ask Mayor and Council to have a better look at the projected density and please put in a better buffer along 216th, meaning lower density or a buffer, an agriculture buffer. Number 2, drainage. Water flows downhill from 80th all the way to 76, and it's all downhill. When I look at the Williams neighborhood plan, I see green areas and parks, and thank you for putting a new park in. However, I witnessed when Fenn Williams, who they named the Williams plan, his road, you might know it as 78th. This gentleman lives on it, right there. Good evening. And we called that the Street of Dreams. And as soon as that road went in, I saw a drastic change when I was a lot younger with the water levels in the ditches down along by 216th that goes into our river there. Increasing, and there's a lot of retention still there. Increasing density means more roof space, asphalt and pavement, and unfortunately not enough permeated areas. Yes, I know the Township of Langley has priority policies in regarding to water retention on individual properties and water retention ponds. My dad used to say sometimes it's hard to get a gallon in a quart jar. But with this large amount of population in the Williams area, what is planned, I feel it is not sustainable for drainage when this community is built right out. And at that point, it could be too late. Who pays for it? A good example is years ago, the ditches got too small and there was 10 acres cleared up above our farm on ALR land, and I had the township out to show them the flooding that was going between my house and the dairy, and the response was, who owns the water? It's civil, and maybe dig a bigger ditch around our house. So water problems can resort onto landowners. So please take home a message. Don't overlook the drainage. It is serious and it has great impacts. My thoughts on the solution, 7, 8. Yeah, my thoughts. I talked about, I was supposed to talk about some of these pictures, but okay. A solution that I see that may not solve it all is 80th needs to be open to 212, like it's already in the plan. Just give them to me. Thanks. 80th traffic goes to 212, goes out to 208. That may alleviate some of the problems, And sorry for just in one sentence spending millions and millions of dollars, but it has to be addressed, and it is going to, and I know it's in the plan, but traffic that can go down, when Glover Road opens up, traffic can go down Labonte, traffic goes up to 216th and over the freeway to Fort Langley or Walnut Grove. If 216th needs to be beefed up, but anyhow, that's just a thought I had. That may have to come sooner than later. In conclusion, I love the more park space, but please take a second sober look at retaining water and dealing with it when it flows downhill. If you have to be pressured, okay, I'm supposed to pause. A new sentence. If you have to be if you're being pressured into more housing by doubling the density, and that's kind of a cheeky comment from the provincial government, don't allow them to upzone when it comes to council. Keep it where it's supposed to be. We must have a buffer along 216th corridor, and that could and does mean reducing the density along 216th. To prevent urban-rural conflict. And finally, please fix the traffic issues. It greatly impacts residents in the township and future residents of the township. And sorry, I wish I had my pictures because a lot of them would make sense why I did it, but thank you very much for
I
your
have
time.
a question from Council. Councillor Ferguson.
No, yeah, Mr. Davis, thank you for coming today. I'm just referring to some of those pictures. Now, you're talking about the drainage in the ditches, and also what I want to know, there's some farming equipment alongside as cars were going by as well. You're working. Is that hitting the road as well, and causing a problem for yourself and the folks driving by, and also the road and the ditches and everything all together?
Oh, both. Like, you know, that barn's been there for 120 years. Mm-hmm. All my life, we've loaded manure there. The traffic just gets so congested. And the improved crossing across, the corner, we spent about $4 million on, it's actually reduced it down. Mm-hmm. And to get around that corner with manure spreaders today, it's not fun. You'll see some of those pictures where we're waiting to get into traffic. And on some of those pictures were machines that we use 5-6 times a year for a week at a time. And they're just getting bigger and it's getting harder and harder to move around. And what may be a bit of what you don't point my finger, sorry, Steve. But I do find that people in Hague, Saskatchewan, mm-hmm. pull over for the tractor. Mm-hmm. In the Milner Valley or in Willoughby, they wonder what you're doing on the road. Mm-hmm. And we have lights and all that sort of stuff, but it's a mentality. And that's why so many more people are going to, if you get out there in an old tractor with a straw hat and a piece of straw, he must be going in a parade. But when you get out there with a real productive tractor and some sort of a piece of equipment, they don't understand it. So yes, that's an issue. That's something that we may have to look at, and I have, but to back in and load differently, but we still got to get out into traffic and get to the other fields.
Anyway, thank you for coming. I remember your father, Hugh, telling me, I'm not sure if he was going to stuff me into that pork container or not, but he gave you some advice regardless.
What advice did he give you?
He said about sticking that 1 liter or 1 quart into a gallon container.
Well, yeah, it's hard when you, I've learned this in my past experience, that water problems, they don't maybe come out right away. They come out after, and then it's not addressed. And the calculations that are used over here can sometimes are not reality. Especially in the last 2 or 3, look at that rainstorm we had the other day. I didn't have to have a bath for a week after that. Thank you very much.
Tough act to follow, but are there any other submissions from the public? Please come forward.
My name's Diane Kask, and I live in Alder Grove. So the revised Williams Neighborhood Plan of 2023 has many good features, such as a dedicated area for a school and parks, keeping the transition from the residential area in Yorkson to the business park in Williams is also beneficial. However, there is an area that needs to be remedied. Apartments so close to farmland is really a no-go. The ALR land must be protected from encroachment and allowed to continue doing the job of feeding the population as it has done for over 160 years and needs to continue in perpetuity. There needs to be a green belt left along 216th Street from 80th Avenue down to 76th Street. This could be a passive park left relatively undisturbed with walking trails. With increased density in this revised version of Williams Neighborhood Plan, residents will need more areas to interact with nature. The green space will help to stabilize the slope and to provide a permeable ground to help prevent flooding on the lands below. It will also provide privacy and protection from the noise and fumes from the vehicles, cars, trucks, motorcycles, and tractors. The replacement trees could be planted in this green belt. In a time of climate change, we need more trees to clean the air and provide cooling to the earth. A green belt is a must. Thank you to Mayor and Council for our opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Are there any other submissions from the public on item C4? For a second time, are there any other submissions from the public on item C4? For a third and final time, are there any other submissions from the public on item C4? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing for item C4. I'm going to move consideration of third and final reading. Is there a seconder to that? Come on, there's a reason. Okay, Councillor Pratt seconded it. Thank you. Call the question on consideration of third and final. C4. That carries unanimously. So I will move third and final reading. Is there a seconder to that? Seconded by Councillor Pratt. Is there any discussion? Councillor Ferguson.
I think it's important to note that, there's still some work that we need to do. And I think that's all part of the planning process. I'm talking about anything to do with the impact on neighbors, impact on agricultural land, drainage and other things. Do I need to ask that question through the chair or to yourself?
No, I have a referral coming anyway, but
Okay.
there's just some work to do, and I think we just get on with it. And we have that referral, and I think I'd have some suggested amendments based on some additional submissions. There were quite a few comprehensive submissions prior to today,
Yes.
but there were some additional points that I'd recommend that we could add. So I'm going to move on to that. So I'm going to move with that referral. If you could pull up the first part of that referral, please. The second part is a subsequent additional motion, but just the referral for now. So I did email that. There we are. Great. So I'm going to move a referral, and if you could please, I actually have a copy here, but you could, just the first part for now, please. Yeah. The council refer consideration of third and final reading back to staff. I'll read this out. Update the proposed single-family designations fronting the 212 connector to a townhouse designation without adjustment to the contemplated park or nature spaces. Item B, update proposed medium and low-density apartment designations fronting 216th Street, north and south of 78th Avenue to a townhouse designation. Reduce or remove the requirement for mandatory office spaces within mixed-use or residential developments south of 80th Avenue, as it may be appropriate for council to consider, permitting separate building entrances for commercial and residential uses. Permit the grocery use of a maximum permitted size of 4,500 square meters to be provided within subsequent phases of development beyond the first, when otherwise identified and confirmed to be provided within high-density mixed use. Include a new land use designation and location for a civic institutional use and primary municipal operations center north of 80th Avenue and adjacent to 216th, potentially contiguous with the contemplated detention pond for the area. And include a new land use designation and locations for non-market housing, potentially fronting the 212 connector, 80th Avenue and or south of 79th Avenue. I so move. Is there a seconder to that? Seconded by Councillor Martins. Is there any discussion? I do have some additions to also make to add a G and an H. Any discussion on this? Great. So I have another amendment. I have these which I can provide. I'd like to amend, move on. Nope, there we go. Item G, to reduce, this would be one separate amendment, I'll move this to amend, to reduce the quantity of apartment to townhouse as it may be appropriate for council to consider. So move. Seconded by Councillor Martins. Is there any, hit the wrong button. Can you take it back? No. Can you fix that, please? No, we cannot. No, not for me. It's great software. Wow, this software is, let's just say, oh, now it wants authorization. Council, they do this on purpose to get us to fund the upgrades they want. Here we go. Okay, we're back. So I'm going to open up, then I'm going to close that. Close that. Okay, I'm going to clear the queue. And I'm going to open up a secondary motion for that amendment. Is there a seconder to that amendment? Seconded by Councillor Rint. Any discussion on that amendment? Seeing none, I'll call the question on that. That carries unanimously. I have a second amendment, so I'd like to move to consider an improved ALR buffer as it may be appropriate for council to consider. Is there a seconder to that? Seconded by Councillor Ferguson. Is there any discussion on that? Seeing none, call the question on that. 4. Great. Now back to the referral as amended. Is there any discussion on this referral? Yeah, I understand. I understand. We know that they're not here. It's pretty obvious they're not here. So carries unanimously with Councillor Kunst and Councillor Richter absent. Is there any discussion on the referral as amended? So I want to thank, we've had quite a few written submissions about this, and the verbal submissions here tonight were good, and there's some amendments here. The Williams plan does need a bit more work, and I think it needs some additional attention and revisions as outlined here. And I think it'll be good to get this back to staff and address a lot of these concerns. And there's a subsequent motion to follow here to address them further. So I'm going to send this back, and we're going to have some more work, and it will trigger another public hearing and another round of input to have everybody have a look at everything that is being prescribed here to reduce some densities, tweak some designations, and I think get that population number down a bit. Is there any other discussion on this referral? Great. Call the question on the referral of C4 as amended. That carries unanimously. If you could please bring up the subsequent additional motion related to Williams, please. I don't know. They don't know how any of this works. There we are. So I'm going to move this, and this is related to Williams and the input that we've received, not just for Williams, but I think a rising situation that has to be addressed. This is for a report to council. And I'll read it out. That staff report to council with a draft development phasing council policy framework for residential and mixed-use development applications within the Williams Neighborhood Plan, south of 80th Avenue, only advancing to council for final adoption and potentially other areas that council may wish to consider, potentially subject to 1, an annual review by council, 2, the commencement of construction of multiple additional schools within the Willoughby Community Plan areas. Number 3, additional development proceeding within the Latimer, Yorkson, Carboth, and Smith neighborhood plans with significant progress towards the completion of arterial roads and sidewalk infrastructure within these areas and the consideration of additional school sites. Number 4, the provision of arterial roads and sidewalks outlined within the Williams neighborhood plan. And number 5, a known, reliable timeline and funding commitments for needed capacity upgrades for Provincial Highway number 10 from the Langley bypass to the 232nd interchange and its connection to the 216th interchange. I so move. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Van Popte. Is there any discussion on this? I think this speaks for itself. We are seeing a significant challenge within Willoughby, I think epitomized by this plan, to consider the option of proceeding to complete other areas prior to continually open up new areas that don't have the infrastructure, don't have the schools, and simply make the situation continually worse within Willoughby. I think it's time to at least consider and look what a policy framework looks like, and it can be sent back, it can be rejected, it can be voted down. But I think it's appropriate for council to really start to look at the fact that we are doing our part for housing. We are looking at increasing densities, making more mixed-use walkable neighborhoods, not only here, but on 200 Street, potentially in other plans that are currently being considered for changes. And we're not seeing the follow-through from the province when it comes to highway infrastructure, Highway 10 infrastructure, connections to arterial road network, and definitely not seeing it with school construction. So with that, any other questions on this referral? Seeing none, I'll call the question on the referral. That carries unanimously. Get a motion to terminate. Moved by Councillor Martin, seconded by Councillor Pratt. All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Thank you.